All right, on to Unit 27, which focuses on the 1970s. So we'll talk about America in the 70s. We're coming out of the tumultuous decade of the 60s. The 1970s seen in a lot of ways as kind of a transition for America, kind of the end of the kind of liberal tidal wave in terms of presidencies, at least, and by the end of the decade, an ushering in of the great conservative revolution of Ronald Reagan. So an overview of the 70s. Remember that the 1960s had brought lots of change to America, but it ended with the nation electing a president who promised law and order and adherence to the silent majority in Richard Nixon. We're going to see in the 1970s, back in the 60s, we saw a lot of tense Cold War activity. Cuban Missile Crisis, maybe the closest we ever came to nuclear war with the Soviets, early in the 60s. A lot of upheaval with Vietnam just really escalating and becoming a problem here in America. But in the 70s, we're going to see that yields to an era of détente, something Richard Nixon called détente, which was a softening of the feelings between the Soviet and American governments and American governments and communist governments in both the Soviet Union and China. It's also a decade of political scandal. That's going to take center stage first with the release of the Pentagon Papers and then Watergate. And the latter will result in the resignation of President Nixon. So we'll get into some details about what those scandals were and how they impacted America. By the end of the decade, Americans will elect Jimmy Carter, who's seen by a lot as a political outsider. He is a Southern Democratic governor who becomes president and will oversee some conflicts that we'll talk about by the end of the decade. And the Middle East becomes really a focal point for Americans during the 1970s, primarily due to an energy crisis, but also to just conflict between Israel and the surrounding Islamic nations of the Middle East, but hope in a major peace agreement between the nations of Israel and Egypt during the Carter years, followed really by an unfortunate event in the Iran hostage crisis at the end of the decade. As the 1970s are ushering in, the last year of the 60s saw a triumph for the United States when it came to the space race. If you remember way back in the 1950s unit, we talked about how that began primarily with the Soviets launching Sputnik, the first successful satellite. And we'd also talked about then how the Soviets had kind of led in the space race, or at least the world impression or thought was that they were just kind of a step ahead of us. Symbolically, that really changes, though, here in 1969 when the U.S. reaches the moon. That was President Kennedy's dream in the early 60s. It comes true in 1969 when NASA, which is our United States Space Agency, successfully landed. Neil Armstrong was actually the first to land and to touch down on the moon while Nixon was president. Now, this might seem a little familiar today, but the Republican president did not have the greatest relationship with our national media. I want to take a little bit of time to look at some of the events that had the Nixon administration clashing with our media. President Nixon did not have a love for the media. especially with the escalating negative coverage concerning Vietnam, and then a toxic relationship following the release of Pentagon Papers, and then its handling of the Watergate scandal. Nixon employed his vice president, Spiro Agnew, to consistently attack and counterattack media coverage. Now, you contrast that with today, our Republican president, President Trump, consistently attacks the media, but instead of using his vice president, he uses Twitter. So kind of an interesting connection here in the 70s to what we're seeing today. Now, I mentioned the Pentagon Papers. What were they? Well, they were confidential military documents on the Vietnam War that were leaked to the media and then published in the press. And it is an important moment because, I mean, when you have official secret government documents, there had been times in the past where the media would respect that and not make it public knowledge. So this is really a big transition in the relationship between the media and our government here in the early 1970s, in that it did decide to publish the information from the Pentagon Papers. And what it published basically was doubts. It exposed a lot of doubts in our government and in high-ranking military officials towards the Vietnam War. And so a lot of the American public was already kind of feeling this, the negativity towards Vietnam, and these papers made it look like, hey, our leaders knew the same thing, and yet we were continuing to fight on. We were continuing to draft individuals into the war and put them in harm's way. So it was a very negative connotation. So you have the dynamic of the whole relationship with the press and the government in the Vietnam War, and then you have kind of the bigger, broader issue of should the press, when it is given stuff illegally, when information is leaked that's supposed to be confidential, should they print it? Should they release that information? Or is there kind of a duty to protect the nation from sensitive material? So two kind of broader issues with the Pentagon Papers. Criticism of Nixon also occurred with the media, specifically with Vietnam. Now, a lot of criticism had come to the doorstep of President Johnson in the 60s. In fact, we learned last time that was the reason why he bowed out and didn't even run in 68. It had a lot to do with Vietnam and criticism there. So it wasn't like Nixon was being completely blamed, but he had his own kind of things, ownership of some blunders that the media really focused on and heightened. One was just kind of the moral, philosophical question of the American Army's decision to bomb the Viet Cong on Cambodian soil. Cambodia is a neighboring nation to Vietnam. It was officially neutral. It wasn't taking a position for the communists or on our side. And yet we went and bombed our enemy who was crossing the border and transporting in that neutral nation. And that put Nixon under a lot of criticism. And things would get progressively worse in Vietnam, and Nixon would eventually pull American troops out by 1973. The Vietnam will eventually fall by 75 to the communists, with the American forces not fighting there after Nixon pulls the troops out in 73. It was just too hard for the South Vietnamese army to hold off the powerful Viet Cong. And so Vietnam falls to communism. So looking at the broader context of things, Vietnam looks like, our biggest failure of, the Cold War. There wasn't really a lot of positives that came out of that. And there are a lot of opinions, like we talked about last unit, on why that was. You have the kind of the liberal slant of things that, hey, it was an unjust war, we shouldn't have been there, and we learned our lesson. We got defeated by insurgent guerrillas, just like we were insurgent guerrillas against the British Army back in the 1700s. We knew the land and the territory and had the bigger, broader thing to fight for. And so there was a lot of that kind of Monday morning quarterbacking or analysis of why we lost. And then you have a lot of the conservative viewpoint of why we lost Vietnam, and it was just that it was played more politics than it was a military venture. That presidents were throughout the time we fought Vietnam, which includes Kennedy, which includes Johnson, which includes Nixon, that all of them, failed to give a full effort, kind of give a half-hearted effort. We never even really declared it as an official war, for example. And so the conservative side of it is that we just didn't fight it right. But regardless, seen as one of the bigger failures of the Cold War for the United States. Now, on paper, looking at the results of the election of 1972, it's probably confusing to say that election will eventually cost President Nixon his presidency and have him go down in history with a big black mark, because the election itself was decisive. Nixon defeated the Democratic challenger George McGovern very easily in 1972 to win re-election. But a scandal emerges concerning the election of 72 that would eventually, 2 years later, cost Nixon the presidency, and that was known as Watergate. Now, what Watergate was members of Nixon's re-election campaign in 72 had been caught breaking into Democratic Party headquarters in Washington. Like, they were trying to steal secrets on the campaign of how they were going to campaign against Nixon to try to give Nixon, an advantage in that election. And the unfortunate thing is it was really unnecessary. The way that the election played out, they were caught red-handed. There was no, real smoking gun information that the Republicans even got from that venture. He would have most likely won the election and won it easily. So really it's Nixon's paranoia that gets the best of him. Or at least the paranoia of his campaign, as it was never directly proven that he had, foreknowledge of the whole break-in. And it's called Watergate because it was a break-in of the Watergate headquarters, or the Watergate building was where the headquarters of the Democratic Party was, where they stole the information. But, like they say, it's not usually the crime, it's the cover-up that gets politicians in trouble. And that's what happened, is that President Nixon, though he was never directly proven to be involved in the break-in or its planning, would impede and obstruct the investigation into it, and that evidence would mount against Nixon. Eventually, that evidence was so damning that the House Judiciary Committee approved articles of impeachment. Doesn't mean that he was impeached, but it means that committee was recommending that he would be impeached, and that was the next step for the House to do, and it looked likely that the House would follow the recommendation of its committee. So kind of seeing the writing on the wall, Nixon decides to resign in 1974 instead of going through the public shame of an impeachment and then a trial in the Senate. And all of a sudden, from a president who won a landslide victory in 72, should have been a strong second term that he finished out, he's out of office, and his new vice president, Gerald Ford, who had been his second vice president during his reign, would become the president of the United States in 1974.